Welcome back to Issues and Answers. We're talking about immigration, and we're going to go into some discussion about undocumented workers and people who've come from other parts of the world and live right here in our own community. And I wonder how they got here and how long they're going to stay, and does the government even know that they're here? And I'm talking with attorney Bob Lowe, and he has his own firm here, and he's been practicing in a myriad of areas that has to do with immigration law and policy. And again, thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me.
Undocumented workers, what does that mean, and are we overwhelmed with them at this point? And why can't we count them? Why don't we know where these people are?
Well, those are very good questions. I think the way I look at this is kind of like the good news, bad news scenario. The good news is that as of 2006, the United States accepted more legal immigrants as permanent residents than any other country. And in 2008, for example, there are 1,046,000 immigrants who are naturalized in the United States, and those primarily being Mexico, India, and the Philippines. The bad news is that we have anywhere from 12 to 20 million illegal immigrants in the United States, benefiting a variety of people, but not perhaps benefiting the country. You asked about the ability in the last segment to be able to track these people, and that was a very, very challenging topic that we undertook in New York in December, when we had the national meeting for the New York American Immigration Lawyers Association. You can imagine a lot more immigrants going to New York than, for example, going to South Carolina. And they were talking about the massive challenge that the U.S. government has in keeping track of the immigrants that are in the system, not including the 12 to 20 million undocumented aliens.
I don't mean to sound as if I am discouraged by these individuals being here, and I don't want to say these people as if they're people that are unwanted. This country was made up of immigrants a long time ago, and it still needs and still benefits from having so many people from different parts of the world. It's what makes our society interesting, I think. We're like a salad bowl, as I like to put it. We've got all these different flavors, and we're covered with dressing, and that's the United States and being a United States citizen. I think what concerns folks, though, is that we have people who have not signed up to be United States citizens. And the question is, do you just want to come here, make money, and send it home?
Well, as we were talking earlier, Cheryl, the 12 to $20 million immigrants really troubles me. And it troubles me because I've always thought of America as being a rule of law issues. And so you have people that want to come in and they want to do good things for their family. And that's the vast majority of the immigrants that come in to do this. You'll talk with the enforcement folks, and they'll tell you that they're seeing the bottom end of people. People have already gone through the judicial process and have to leave for a variety of reasons. Others are sending money home, as you know, to try to save up enough money so that their other people can come over, or they can figure out a legal way to get into this country, perhaps get an education or so forth. But when you talk about people that always have to hide, that always have to worry about the man in a different way than you and I worried about the man, you don't breed a respect for the rule of law. And that's what's particularly troubling. Go ahead.
And we want to be able to count people. The census is going on right now, I think. And we want to be able to count people so that we can provide government services. And there are other reasons why we need to know how many folks are in our country. And the other thing that worries me as it concerns numbers is, isn't it important that we know who one is so that we can provide translators in various services like the medical field and all of that? And I'm wondering, the people that you're talking with, do they recognize the need to Americanize themselves to become full citizens as opposed to just working here and leaving?
Well,
or sending money home?
I think that things have changed over the country. At least I've seen it in my own little world. My grandfather and grandmother came to this country, and from mainland China. And you may or may not know this, but there was a law that was designed to exclude Chinese from this country.
That was going to be the last segment, the exclusionary laws.
Right, the Chinese Exclusion Act. So my folks came over in the late 1800s, and as a practical matter, new Chinese, for example, weren't allowed back into this country until the 1960s. So the people that came over in my generation, my grandparents, we were infused with this whole concept that we're going to become Americans. We're going to learn to speak English. We're going to go to college. and we're going to be active in our communities. And so, but you also know that there was Chinatown, there was Spanish Town, there was Germantown, Little Italy.
And that's the diversity of America.
That's exactly right.
And to me, that's one of our strengths. That's the beauty of America. I think, though, that there are those who are concerned that we're all not speaking the same language. You know, if I go to get my nails done, there's a language being spoken that I don't understand. And that doesn't seem so American to me. And I want to know, why are people holding on to that side of themselves and not joining the larger group which speaks English?
I think there's a comfort level associated with hanging out with people that you have things in common with. I think that my wife, who is also Chinese, her grandfather had this wonderful idea. There were 9 children in the family, and he sent the 9 children to college throughout the country in a different state, to come back and tell him what it was like in the other states.
Wow, that's
he
a
was
good idea.
very forward-looking in that regard.
Yeah.
And every one of my father-in-law's 8 other brothers and sisters speak very good English. All of them went to college.
How are we going to find all of these individuals who live in this country, and I'm going back to that documented issue again, how are we going to be able to find them? Is it necessary? Do you feel like it's necessary for us to know who everyone is in this country? And if so, how are we going to find all of these folks?
Well, we find these folks when they break laws. Is how we find them. If they were once documented, and they have broken a law, and the courts issue a proceeding for them to appear, and they don't appear, then officials of the Immigration Customs Enforcement go out and get them with an order of deportation and deport them. With respect to the others, the silent folks, most of them, by far, the silent folks, until something happens, they're not going to be found. Now, how are they going to be found? They're going to have to go to the hospital someday, maybe.
Yeah.
But you know, my grandparents, remember I told you about those 8 children? Most of them were born at home.
Yeah. Yeah, and that concerns me too, because if we can't get health information to people who need it, you know, if you're an undocumented worker, you're not going to be able to gain access to the health centers and to the doctors. And I've heard some horrible stories about people who, because they had no translator, they had the wrong kind of surgery, or the wrong thing was cut from their bodies. And just stories that it was awful.
Well, you know about the emergency room and the lower income folks using the emergency room as for regular care.
Right.
Okay, who's to know how many of those people are undocumented aliens? And I'm certain that there is a number out there, but it puts a tremendous strain on the economy. The American Immigration Council and Center for American Progress believe that comprehensive immigration reform will add $1.5 trillion to the U.S. economy. Meaning
jobs.
Meaning
people
jobs.
Working at jobs, paying taxes, and all of that.
That's exactly right.
So why don't we have that kind of policy?
We're again trying to deal with a budget issues. Okay, healthcare occupied this administration and continues to occupy the administration. We have to have priorities, as we talked about.
Right. And it seems like the priorities change dramatically, especially where it has to do with immigration policy. But I do want to question you on this idea of exclusionary policy, and you know exactly what I'm talking about. And there are people who've come to this country from different places who are afraid that they could be pushed out at some point, that the government could crack down on them and send them back home, and that's a big fear. And we're going to talk about that, and we'll do that in just a second. Please don't go away. We'll be right back.